Coming up on Business Incorporated. IMF raises red flag over Tanzania's bleak economic outlook. S&P cuts Ethiopia's sovereign ratings to CCC+. Also, today is World Tourism Day as Channels TV partners with UNWTO to stimulate growth through tourism. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Ladi Williams. First, let's take a look at the markets. Investors in Africa displayed more of negative sentiment at intraday. Even Nigeria's all-share index, which ended positive on Friday, was trading in the red, down 0.37%, while South Africa's GSE gained 0.34%. Egypt's EGX 30 was also down at intraday, down almost 1%, while Kenya's all-share index shed 0.29% on Friday. Over to the Middle East now, it was all red. Abu Dhabi lost 0.30% and Dubai is also down 0.52%. Elsewhere, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are down marginally, both at 0.02% respectively. And over to Europe now. In Germany, preliminary results on Monday morning showed the center-left Social Democratic Party gaining the largest share of the vote with 25.8%. Let's bring in Ashutosh Pandey now, right there in Frankfurt. Great to have you, Ashutosh. How are investors and traders viewing the German election results right now?
Well, there hasn't been a major sense of excitement on the trading floor here, and that's precisely because the elections are pretty much on expected lines. The opinion polls had been predicting this result, and there was no clear winner in sight even then. Even it's the same case now. So that's why the traders here feel that there's not going to be any major change as far as the policy is concerned, because it's the Social Democrats who've been ruling along with the the Christian Democrats for these years. So they are the ones which have come out as the front runners so far, and the traders don't really expect any major changes as far as the fiscal policy is concerned or any other economic policy is concerned. But there was certainly a sigh of relief at the fact that the Linke, the socialist left party, will not be part of any of the coalitions now, and that was a possibility that the markets were actually dreading. Remember, the Linke party could not secure enough votes to actually be part of any of the coalitions, so that they've been actually ruled out. Had Linke been part of the scheme of things, the markets feared that they would go in for a lot of regulations, would be rather business unfriendly. They are not a big fan of euro, so all these were concerned. And there were also reports about how millionaires from Germany were shifting their wealth across to Switzerland because they actually feared a lot of crackdown on their wealth. But that fear has now been taken care of. Also, I would like to stress that there were the green stocks, the renewable energy stocks were performing really well, and that's a lot to do with the fact that the greens, they have done, they have given in the best performance in the history.
Right, the greens are looking good today. But how would the markets and businesses be, watching the coalition talks?
Yeah, first of all, it's going to take a while. So it's going to carry on for weeks, if not months. Last time it went on for almost 6 months. But this is not something that the market would be too worried about, too perturbed about, because most of it has been factored in. Again, the opinion polls did not show any clear winners, so the markets actually did factor in the fact that it will take in some time to form the next coalition. So that's not something that they are going to worry a lot about. Having said that, they would be hoping that the process is actually sorted as quickly as possible, because Germany is just recovering from a pandemic. They would want to have a clear leadership in place. It's not like 2017 when German economy was doing much better than what it is doing now. Then we knew who the chancellor would be, Angela Merkel, and her policies were well known. in this case, we don't know who the chancellor would be because the fight is so close. So that's one thing that the markets would be actually looking at. Other thing would be how the discussion between the Greens and the Liberal, the business-friendly FDP goes, because that's again something that the markets would be interested in. They both actually have same aims, but they have different ways of reaching there. So different ways of how to spend on them, how to raise the money. So while the Greens would be more interested in being more fiscally creative and also higher taxes, the Free Democrats are not in favor of that. That's a big no for them, but it remains to be seen how they are going to negotiate going forward.
All right, in another voting now, Berlin residents voted to expropriate big home builders in a referendum. It's not legally binding, but how serious of a problem is this outcome for those companies?
It would have depended a lot on who takes control of Berlin Senate, and it has today's results show that it's going to be the Social Democrats, even in Berlin, the state, and they have said that they are not they don't see expropriation as the way forward, a solution to the problem, the housing woes of Berlin. So this referendum loses its steam. So it's not legally binding. It's not like something that has to be implemented. So the SPD party there would say that okay, we are going to take into consideration the interest, what people feel about this, but that's it. We don't do anything further than that. We are going to take care of the housing crisis. That's one thing, and that's precisely why Vonovia, the biggest landlord, and Deutsche Wohnen, the small rival that Vonovia is trying to buy, Vonovia is the best performing stock on DAX today. So that also shows that even investors don't really think that there's going to be much happening against the company after this referendum.
All right, Ashutosh, thanks for that update. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, over to the UK now. UK energy stocks like BP will be closely watched today after panic buying over the weekend due to a truck driver shortage that left many gas stations in Britain without any fuel. Let's talk to Juliana now in the UK for an update. Great to have you, Juliana. So you spoke to Chimi earlier on Business Morning about the fuel shortage issue in the UK. The UK government is again urging people not to panic buy fuel and to fill up their vehicles as normal. What's it looking like right now?
Lucky for me, Laddie, I'm pretty safe inside the studio, but it's still carnage out there. We're still seeing social media reports of, fist pumping at the petrol stations. And this is, as you said, because of panic buying. We've seen it before. We saw it during the first lockdown, and it was toilet roll, but this time it is fuel. And the government have asked people to stay calm, but there is a sense of huge worry. Lots of blaming going on at the moment as well about who may or who may not have leaked this information to the press, because what started off as what could have been a pretty manageable issue with shortages that were affecting about 10 of BP's 1,200 forecourts across the country has now turned to this, which is about 50 to 80% of petrol stations across the UK basically being dry. We're hearing talks of teachers, nurses, people who actually do need their car to get to work, having to queue for hours upon hours. It is causing lots of carnage on the streets. Again, if we backdate this is all about the HGV driver shortage. Lots of people are saying, is this down to Brexit and the fact that so many of these non-British workers had to go back, they couldn't come back. The government are trying to say this is all linked to the pandemic, and about 40,000 tests that were supposed to take place during lockdowns just couldn't take place, which is why there is this shortage. But there are others within the industry, particularly the Road Haulage Association, who are saying this goes way back, years back, pushback where, you know, skilled workers, or the fact that we've kind of changed what we think of as a skilled worker in the UK. Now it's about pen pushers, people who've been to university and, you know, having lots of degrees. They are considered skills, whereas people who actually have the real skills have been left behind with working long hours, being low paid. So they're saying that being a HGV driver is no longer attractive. So there are a myriad of issues here. Just to have a brief update, Operation Escalin is supposed to be taking place any time from now, and that's a contingency that the government have where they are going to bring in the British Army to drive these fuel tankers. Of course, many of them are very skilled at that, so they could take over. And also as well, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has issued 5,000 temporary visas which will go out to people across the continent to come into the UK to drive these vehicles. Now, the problem is we already know that Europe are also having their own supply issues. So, yes, this is a major issue. Hopefully, according to the government, this will, you know, start coming back to normal over the next few days. But because the Labour Party, the opposition party, are having their own conference at the moment, we're not getting any significant sound bites from the opposition party because they're unable to do so whilst the Labour are holding court at the moment.
Right. Well, we'll keep tracking that. But how are investors reacting to this, and how the stocks are looking this intraday?
The stocks are looking pretty good. Surprise, surprise, the square miles seem to have shut their eyes to this fuel crisis. I wonder if this has got anything to do with the fact that Brent crude is trading up 1.7%,
right,
trading at the highest value it's been in about 3 years. So the oil majors, BP and Royal Dutch Shell, are really pulling up the blue chips at intraday. As you were just talking with Architosh in Frankfurt, the German election, even though we don't have a chancellor yet, went as smooth as everybody expected and would anticipate from Germany, Europe's largest economy. So I think people are still pretty chuffed, probably more than Angela Merkel. That will still have to have a couple of days in power. But the FTSE All-Share at intraday is up 0.12%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.13%. And the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's up by 0.05%. In currencies, the British pound is up against the US dollar by 0.22%. Up on the euro by 0.35%, and also up on the Japanese yen at intraday by 0.38%.
All right, Julian. And the auditor of Patisserie Valerie has been fined £2.3 million and accused of a serious lack of competence over its role in the accounting scandal that led to collapse of, you know, the cafe chain. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, this is a significant ruling by the Financial Conduct, the Financial Reporting Council. They've been looking at why Patisserie Valerie collapsed in 2018. So they've been looking forensically at the books between 2015 to 2017. And Grant Thornton, which is the 6th largest accountancy firm in the UK, was supposed to be managing it. And they've deemed to be completely incompetent. As you said, they've been given this fine of over £2 million. According to the judge, it was supposed to be £4 million, but they said they really made sure that they were cooperating with the proceedings, which is why it's been more than halved. Apparently, they missed many red flags. They weren't questioning the management as thoroughly as they should have. And it isn't just them. There's also a specific auditor been named, David Newston. He's received a fine of £87,000. And again, Laddie, this is just another scandal of many scandals where the regulator has had to hone in on auditors and kind of slap their wrists. I do believe under this Conservative government, they are going to start getting the Big Four and others back in check, because in this country we have seen a lot of these where big companies have collapsed with massive holes in their accounting, holes that seem to have gone unchecked by the accounting firm supposed to be looking at those numbers.
Right, I guess it's time to double check. All right, Juliana, thank you so much for the update. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, and today is World Tourism Day, and the theme for this year's celebration is Tourism for Inclusive Growth. This year's celebration is being hosted by Côte d'Ivoire, fully showcasing the potential of tourism to create jobs for all and bring communities together. COVID-19 pandemic has had a massive social and economic impact on all of these world economies. We'll get more of this after the break. Do stay with us. This is Business Incorporated. Welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated. Well, it's World Tourism Day, and the COVID-19 pandemic has had a massive social and economic impact. Both in developed and developing economies have been hit hard, and marginalized groups and the most vulnerable have also been hit the hardest. UN World Tourism Organization says the restart of tourism will help kickstart recovery and growth. Meanwhile, Channels Television and United Nations World Tourism Organization are now partners in accelerating development in tourism sector by promoting robust conversations as the sector recovers from the pandemic. Do take a listen.
As the world celebrates the 2021 World Tourism Day with the theme Tourism for Inclusive Growth, it's an opportunity for two giants to collaborate, come together and fight or move the sector forward in Africa and the world. We see a coming together of Channels Media Group and the United Nations World Tourism Organization, represented by the chairman of Channels Media Group and the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourism Organization. They meet in Abidjan here in Côte d'Ivoire, the host for the 2021 World Tourism Day. It's now become known that every 5 years the event is hosted in an African country, and so for 2021 it's being hosted in Côte d'Ivoire. The relationship between Channels Television and the United Nations started in August 2015 when the media group first formalized its collaboration with the United Nations to promote its efforts and projects and enhance conversations around the Sustainable Development Goals. The relationship is formalized as they sign the dotted lines and agree, after discussing, of course, on terms that would guide the relationship between United Nations World Tourism Organization and Channels Media Group. And the essence of this is to foster development in the tourism sector.
And nice friendship, because again, African continent needs to be more known outside of and out of the continent, and we see a lot of potential to support African tourism, to develop African culture, and we are starting, and I'm sure that via channels we can communicate better with
This is like the icing on the cake for us, because I love tourism. I like to travel a lot. And then the fact that we have to reset the button for tourism around the world, in the sense that global tourism has taken a hit arising from the pandemic that happened last year. So you rest assured that you have a very good partner in us, Channels TV, and we'll do everything possible to make sure that your objectives are met, using us, as a channel to reach the world with your message. So,
thank you. I will add one more.
It's a new dawn as this relationship is set to broaden discussions when it comes to tourism sector and enhance the developmental efforts in the sector, not just in Africa, but in the world, and it will always be memorable because it's the 2021 World Tourism Day celebration. So reporting here from Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, I'm Ini John Mekwa for Channels Television News.
And now to our next conversation. Ratings agency S&P Global cut Ethiopia's sovereign rating to CCC+ from B-, citing heightened political instability and delays to debt restructuring. And S&P maintained its outlook for Ethiopia at negative. Well, let's look at the likelihood of debt restructuring and how the civil conflict will affect the country's public finances and growth outlook. We're having this conversation with Matt Kindiger, Associate Practice Lead, Sub-Saharan Africa at Fronterview in London. Great to have you on the program.
Well, thanks very much for having me today.
Yeah. So to what extent does this downgrade of Ethiopia's sovereign credit rating by S&P reflect a deterioration in the country's public finances?
Certainly it does reflect that public finances in Ethiopia are becoming increasingly strained. The downgrade specifically relates to the fact that rating agencies and investors are increasingly concerned by the delays in Ethiopia's ability to restructure its debt. So it was planning to implement debt restructuring earlier this year, and it was also on track to cut its budget deficit and curtail its debt before the pandemic. But COVID-19 really has blown Ethiopia's fiscal and budgetary assumptions out of the water, you can say. And this has happened as spending has increased to deal with the pandemic, as well as with the civil conflict in the north of the country. At the same time, economic growth has slowed, and this has meant that the Ethiopian government is forecasting a stagnation in government revenues over the course of, or tax revenues over the course of this year. So certainly the downgrade does illustrate the fiscal strains that the government is facing.
All right. Do you expect the recently formed Ethiopian Creditors Committee to result in a successful restructuring of the country's debt?
Well, this certainly is a positive development and is long overdue. So Ethiopia first requested the formation of a creditors committee or creditors panel to oversee the restructuring of its debt back in February. And it also it also sought debt relief from the G20 earlier this year as well. And so one of the delays, one of the concerns around public finances has been the delay in forming this new credit committee. So certainly it is a positive development. And it also is quite closely linked to the IMF, additional assistance from the IMF. So Ethiopia has sought additional financing from the IMF, and the formation of this creditors committee does bode well for this, because it means that the wheels are in motion, or the wheels are turning, you could say. Additionally, China is involved, France is involved. So certainly we do think there's an increased likelihood because it has the backing of these major global powers. But certainly the outcome is not very clear. And this is because there's likely to be quite a lot of resistance by the Ethiopian government to really restructuring finances very aggressively. And this is because public finances, as we know, are under pressure in Ethiopia. So certainly no guarantee of success, but it is a positive development.
Right, quite positive there. Well, how will the country's civil conflict affect the outlook for the economy and the government's ability of the government to actually stabilize its public finances?
Interesting. Yes. So interestingly, Ethiopia is one of the only countries in sub-Saharan Africa where we here at Front of View expect economic growth to slow over the next year or so. So most other, or almost every other African economy is expected to accelerate as the effects of the pandemic begin to wane. In Ethiopia's case, we are expecting economic growth to slow. And so this will mean that debt to GDP ratios, again, will probably expand faster than previously expected. It's worth remembering, however, that the Ethiopian government continues to have external support from aid agencies, international organizations such as the EU, UNICEF, and the World Bank. And so these organizations will contribute to fairly substantial external assistance, which means that government functions such as those relating to social welfare, economic development will continue to receive funding. But the civil conflict in the far north of the country certainly is already having an effect on public finances. The government has raised its defense budget by 11% in real terms for 2021-2022. It's also cutting or sort of stagnating its healthcare budget and its education budget as a result. So you can see that the government is really having to make very difficult choices when it comes to allocating finances, and we expect these to continue for the foreseeable future. So certainly quite considerable stress over the next year or so.
Right. All right, Matt, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there now. Matt Kindiger is an Associate Practice Lead, Sub-Saharan Africa, Front of View. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And to other stories now on the African continent. International Monetary Fund has raised concerns over Tanzania's economic outlook. Tanzania faces an urgent balance of payment support as the government implements a comprehensive plan to tackle the COVID-19 shock in the wake of declining export receipts and rising import bill. Tanzania requires urgent financial support of $1.1 billion in the next 12 months to avert a potential economic fallout arising from the COVID-19 pandemic and a rising import bill linked to rising crude oil prices. Additional funding comes after the IMF board approved a disbursement of $567 million to Tanzania to help the country finance its urgent balance of payment needs arising from COVID-19. And all right, that's it on Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye for now.